Chapter 3: The First Challenge.
The Dunns finally pulled into the dirt parking lot at the south end of Stinson Beach. It was nearly noon, but the morning fog hadn't yet burned off. As he got out of the SUV, Bo looked almost straight up at Highway 1, the road they'd come in on, as it descended from the cliffs above the beach. For his part, Ty pulled out his waterproof camera and hurried to a small boulder overlooking the shoreline to wait for the shark to show up. He climbed the rock and sat there, motionless and stealthy, like a downwind lion waiting to pounce on its prey, with water and Cheetos on one side, sunblock on the other, and his cheap camera ready to go. "Look, he won't get any detail with that thing even if he sees a shark," Bo told his mother. "I tried to tell him before we left, but he wouldn't listen. He's never going to get close enough for a good shot." I was so worried something might go wrong," said Abby. "I didn't stop to think something needed to go right." She shook her head. "I should have let him bring the Nikon and the zoom lens and taken my chances. He's going to be so disappointed." Serves him right, thought Bo. At least he won't bug me while he's glued to that rock. Blake, Abby, and Bo collected the beach chairs, cooler, boogie boards, and sunblock and slogged through the soft, pebbled gray sand to a spot near Ty's boulder at the water's edge. 20 miles north of San Francisco, the beach stretched for more than 3 miles as it bent around Bolinas Bay. As his parents unfolded the chairs and threw down a couple of oversized towels, Bo pulled on his wetsuit and grabbed his boogie board. No sharks had been seen since Tuesday, so the lifeguards were letting people swim away. "Be careful out there," said Abby, slipping her arm around his waist and pulling him close. "The cold water could cause your stomach muscles to cramp. Way worse than when you're lying in bed. And you can't drown in a bed." "I think it'll be okay," said Bo. "I haven't had cramps for a while. And besides, I'm pretty warm in this wetsuit." "Yeah," said Abby, "but you're not in the water yet. Take it slow." Bo heard the warning, but his enthusiasm got the better of him. He headed out where the water rose to his chest, pushing through falling swells as he went. He forced himself to not worry about how the bag would handle the stress, and he soon found he could work around it just fine. Once he saw a wave he liked, Bo would turn around and plop stomach down on the board and ride it to shore. He did it again and again. Actual physical activity. His first real exercise since the operation. His stomach was tender, but no cramps. He couldn't get enough of this. As the day stretched into late afternoon, Bo had to admit the beach had been awesome, even without Jesse. He doubted Ty saw it that way, though. His brother had wasted hours on his rock with no sign of a shark. Ty gave up and climbed down. "I didn't get no shark pictures," he yelled as he walked toward the others. "Nothing's going to happen here. I want to go home." But he hadn't been in the water yet, and Bo couldn't help feeling a little sorry for him. So he told Ty it would be dumb to come this far and go home dry. Ty finally put down the camera, placed his implant processor in its waterproof case inside his backpack, and joined Bo. "Just one time," he said. That was cool with Bo. He threw Ty his boogie board and then grabbed the one that had sat behind Abby's beach chair all day. As they reached the water's edge, it occurred to Bo that Ty hadn't even played in the wet sand like they used to do all day long. So he scooped a handful to toss at him. But something stopped him. He felt a sudden knowing, like someone had pried open his brain and poured in information, really specific information. He straightened up and looked way out, almost to the horizon, and spied a shark fin moving toward shore. He was surprised no one else seemed to see it, not even the lifeguards who were all over the place, scanning every inch of water. He grabbed Ty's shoulder and signed, "Shark?" His brother had spotted it too, and signed back, "Yes, yes." So they yelled the word as loud as they could, over and over in every direction. They pointed and jumped up and down and waved their arms to warn people in the water. Several lifeguards heard their screams. They finally picked up the fin through their binoculars and sounded the shark alarm. It was the loudest noise Bo had ever heard. Ty was lucky his implant was off. Everyone panicked. Parents scooped up their small children, and teens and adults farther out in the water swam to shore as fast as they could. Everybody seemed to be frantically looking for somebody else. The calming surf morphed into an Amazon river, vibrating chaotically to life under a large-scale piranha attack. After the explosion of swimming, sprinting, and screaming, it looked like everyone had made it to safety. Bo and Ty retrieved their boogie boards and started back toward their parents. Bo was about to grab a seat when he heard a new scream from the almost empty area just to the south of Ty's boulder. A mother had lost control of her two little boys, who were maybe 5 and 3 years old. They'd broken away from her while she was looking after their baby sister, and they'd waded, giggling and with floaties on their arms, back into the surf. Quickly sizing up the danger, Bo dropped his board and ran as fast as he could toward the family. Ty saw him and then them and raced behind. The floaties had given the little ones a false sense of security, keeping them afloat while they splashed away in the shallow water. But the current was now dragging them away from shore. As he ran, Bo turned to see if anyone from his family was following. Seeing Ty, he started to sign his intentions to help, but his brother signaled him to keep moving. The need to go in after the little boys was as obvious as it was urgent. Bo and Ty ran like crazy men through the loud incoming surf until there was no more sand under their feet. Then they dove in and swam straight toward the boys. And, as it turned out, straight toward the shark. By the time they got to them, the little ones had drifted out past where Bo had been catching waves earlier in the day, and they were crying and screaming for help. Bo arrived first. He grabbed the bigger youngster and turned to swim back. But as he did, a sledgehammer of a cramp pummeled his gut, causing him to double over head first into the waves. His weak stomach muscles had picked the worst possible time to give in to the icy water. They were a throbbing knot of pain worse than any he had ever felt. Bo battled, thrashing wildly, trying to straighten out and keep his head up. He was under the water more than he was above it. Now he was taking in water, not air. He was losing his thoughts. Is this what drowning feels like? This fast, he thought. Ty saw his brother struggling, so he swam to him and pulled his head out of the water. Bo sucked air, breathing again, but the pain in his stomach remained. Bo barely grasped what was going on around him. Ty pointed at a wave forming 20 yards out. He grabbed the two little boys, one with each hand. Then he yelled at Bo to climb on his back. Bo could barely control his movements, but he finally latched onto Ty. He faced the shore and put his arms around Ty's neck, choking him. An instant before the waves swelled around them, Ty jumped as high as he could. With nothing to push off from or hold on to, and 3 scared swimmers clinging to him, it wasn't very high. The wave edged the 4 of them toward shore, tumbling as they went. Ty held on to the boys, but now all 3 of the riders were pulling him under the water, and they'd only progressed a few feet. Bo looked around and caught a glimpse of the shark fin. It was getting closer. "Where is everyone?" Ty gurgled, spitting out water. "Where is to help?" He panicked. The 4 boys were in real trouble now, so, cramped or not, Bo had to make a move. He swung around Ty and forced himself into a semi-straight position with his back to the shore. He'd never hurt so much. His head was a helium balloon, it was so light. He signed to Ty to keep a hold of the boys. Then he locked his hands around the back of his brother's neck and paddled backward with his feet. Ty saw what Bo was doing and paddled forward, but he wasn't helping much because most of his energy was going toward keeping his head above water and holding on to the little boys. Progress was painfully slow. The shark was closer than ever and coming straight at them now. They were running out of time. After about 15 seconds of struggling toward land, Bo's toes touched sand. "I feel the ground," he yelled at Ty, mouthing the words as slowly and clearly as he could in hopes his brother would understand. Just a couple more steps and we'll be there. Ty nodded and paddled even harder. The instant Bo's feet finally landed flat on the bottom, Blake arrived and grabbed him and Ty. The mother of the little boys was right behind him. She lunged and grabbed her sons, while Abby held her baby on the shore. Everyone turned toward the beach. They moved as fast as the undertow would allow, sometimes slipping, but each step getting closer to dry land. Bo noticed that the current had carried the group north a ways, so they were coming ashore almost directly in front of Blake and Abby's beach chairs. Finally, they arrived. Everyone, that is, except Bo. He lagged behind, nearly waist deep in the water, pain shooting through his stomach and holding him back. He took a few more steps and bent over, hands on knees, facing the beach. Suddenly, Bo heard screams. He looked up and saw Ty sprinting straight at him, wildly waving Abby's folded-up beach chair over his head. Before Bo could ask what he was doing with that stupid thing, Ty yelled at him to duck and hurled it like a giant frisbee past his head. Bo heard an awful crunching sound behind him. Then, as he straightened up, something massive barreled into his back, tossing him 20 feet up onto the moist sand in a rolling heap. On his stomach, now facing the ocean, Bo groaned, opened his eyes, and saw the shark barely 10 feet away, partially out of the water, and looking right at him with a mangled chair dangling from its teeth, mingled with rotting, bloody, stinking flesh from a recent kill. It had crashed into Bo, nose first, mouth closed. If Ty hadn't gagged him on that chair, it would be him, or part of him, dangling from those daggers. Now they just lay there, Bo and the shark, staring at each other. Bo was petrified. Blake grabbed him by the feet and dragged him the rest of the way onto dry sand. The shark finally gave up and thrashed its huge body around until it got enough water under itself to swim away. But not before Ty snapped off a half-dozen pictures. Bo couldn't believe he'd gotten his pose after all. Terror gradually gave way to relief. Dozens of people came by and thanked Bo and Ty for being so alert and working so fast to send a warning. The two toddlers and their mother cried and cried, and they stayed with the Dunns until everyone else had walked away. Bo lay on the beach while his parents rubbed his stomach and sighed, working around the bag to get the knot out. It took nearly half an hour. Bo was finally able to stand, sort of, and he staggered over to the remaining chair. Ty threw down a towel next to him and fell into it. But there was no rest, as two lifeguards drove up in a four-wheeler. "How did you spot that shark when it was so far away?" one of them asked. "I really don't know, sir," said Bo. "It just seemed like the place to look." He signed the question to Ty, but he could do no better. Neither of them really knew. "I guess we were just in the right place at the right time," said Bo. The lifeguards shook their heads, saying it was too much of a coincidence. They asked a few more questions, then thanked the boys and their parents and drove away. Bo and Ty looked at each other. How did they know? And at the same time? With one very frustrated shark confirmed and maybe others close by, the beach was officially closed for the day and everyone was ordered to leave. Blake packed things up, including the splintered remains of Abby's lounger, chuckling, "Now that he's got a taste for beach chair, there'll be no stopping him," as he did. He, Abby, and Ty then trundled through the sand toward the SUV. Bo hobbled to the shower house to wipe down and change into dry clothes for the drive home. And for the first time, he noticed how awful he smelled. He kept his thoughts to himself as he entered a shower stall and began to clean up. An explanation for how they'd known about the shark, at least a theory, was still working its way through his mind. Bo's stomach and side screamed with pain as he pulled down the wetsuit, and his back felt like one big bruise. He looked down and saw that, with all the stress and trauma, the bag's sticky backing had won a tug-of-war with his inflamed skin, and blood had seeped out from under the adhesive. As if that wasn't enough, the bag itself had ripped near the bottom. Waste was everywhere, No wonder I smell like an outhouse, Bo thought. But as he moved the bag around to see how bad things were, he discovered something far worse. A 3-inch section of the long incision from his last surgery, 3 inches that hadn't healed at first, and that he had had to clean out and stuff gauze into several times each day until it finally closed several weeks later, had pulled apart again. Oh no, not again. He instinctively pinched both ends of the opening with his fingers and pushed the sides together. He didn't expect this to actually help, he was just reacting. As he held the edges, he grimaced in pain and looked up, and saw a laser-like light pierce the shower stall ceiling and drop towards him. At first he thought he was seeing things. Lights didn't do this, and it seriously scared him. But curiosity pushed his right hand toward the menacing laser as it got closer, and he forced himself to touch it. It was more than a light. It felt like a sparking thin gel flowing through invisible tubing. And it was picking up speed.
End of chapter.